Michelle Tree is in Canada. She's the pod leader of Plant-Based Living Winnipeg, and I am Maya Acosta, and I'm here in the Dallas-Fort Worth area, and our group is called Plant-Based DFW. We're part of PlantPure communities. You can go to that website to find a local group in your area, or you might be interested in getting one started. I know it's a little tricky right now since everything's virtual, but Michelle and I are also part of what is called the Pod Advisory Committee. It's part of the PlantPure Communities organization, and the whole purpose of this committee is to help revive and reignite everyone, and let's get on board and get excited again.
Every pod is different, and some people, you have your walk with the doc, which is amazing. I wish I had a plant-based doctor to go for a walk with my group. But I love getting all the ideas from the other pod leaders. So it's been excellent being part of the PAC group. I'm a pod leader, and how that came about is I saw a movie called PlantPure Nation. It's available on YouTube and it's free to watch. If you haven't seen it, you really should. Experiencing some health concerns within my family, and at the time I was eating a lot of the processed foods that vegans come out with. So I was looking for something else, and I came across that movie, and it was absolutely the answer. And the other answer that I was looking for was, where do I find other people who are eating like this? And at the end of that movie, they suggested if you wanted to start your own community, they're called pods, that you can contact them and get started. So I got started with that, and that was back in 2016. And we started having potlucks, was about a year later, but we, before COVID happened, we had potlucks all the time. And, that's how I brought my community together. And our community on Facebook has nearly 1,500 members. I would say we have a few hundred active members who show up at events and things like that. But it's a very supportive, nice community where people, whether they're fully plant-based or they're learning about it, they can just come and join and meet some other people and get some support and educate themselves at the same time. So it's really great. And it's awesome being part of a bigger international network, because I just feel like it gives me support, and I think it's more exciting, which is pretty cool. I see what you do with your podcast, and I thought, you're so professional. And, even it's funny, that shirt you're wearing, I have a picture of that saved on my computer I saw that you posted that online somewhere, and I saved it as I should make a shirt like that. I thought it was so great. So you've inspired me as well. I think that's what's good about the community. Okay, well, I have made this recipe probably 3 or 4 times, I think. I've made them for potlucks, and why I chose this one is I wanted to choose something from the PlantPure Chef website that's online that we can share, but also because I'm a big fan of Kim Campbell, who's Nelson Campbell's wife, and she has 2 cookbooks. So you can see them here. They're my favorite. This is PlantPure Kitchen and PlantPure Nation. So I was not much of a cook. I really didn't know what I was going to be making. I took out every book that they had on whole food plant-based eating. This one was the only one that was out at the time, but it's her first book. And I got this, and then I decided that the books that I use the most in the library, then I would buy them. And so this was the first book I bought, and it's probably the most used book in my house. My mom loves this book, and we love the recipes in it. And so I think what I love about them is that they're pretty simple. They're obviously delicious, and I think they're great for beginners. So I'm always recommending them. So I wanted to pick something off her website that we could share. And this is a recipe I have made for my own potlucks, and they disappear right away. There's never any leftovers. So I know that other people like them.
I actually jumped ahead and did my mix last night, basically because I have a puppy in my home. I don't have a dog sitter, which is why I'm a little behind on this whole production thing. But he's sleeping right now, and I didn't want to get him barking and going. So I did a taste test of it all last night. I ran it through because I had never prepared this recipe. And since Michelle said that she has done it a few times, I thought, well, it's got to be a good recipe. And so my husband tasted them last night, and I'm going to actually be preparing some too right now. And he was like, delicious and spicy.
I made these for a potluck. To me, jalapenos are not that spicy. We eat a lot of hot sauce in this house, and we like spicy food. But when I brought them to the potluck, I realized not everyone finds that. Some people to jalapeno is, even though it's one of the more mild peppers, I think it's like, 2,500 Scovilles or whatever the measurement is. But a lot of people did find them spicy. So the next time I made them for the potluck, and I've got one here, I just used some red peppers, regular red peppers, and I cut them into strips that are about the size of half a jalapeno. And I filled those. My thinking was, oh, they'll be for the kids, but there's a lot of adults who don't like spice too. And so it's helpful if you're making them for a group of people, if you use a variety of peppers. You can get little red sweet peppers as well. And probably down, if you're from Texas, there's probably a lot more variety of peppers down there because, peppers really are grown mostly in Mexico. And if they're in the States, it's mostly Texas. So I looked that up last night to find out. And then I wore my Mexican dress because I feel like it's a theme kind of thing happening. I feel like this is like a Mexican recipe with the jalapenos. Although it feels like we're in Mexico right now because it's been so hot here in Winnipeg, which is unusual. And we're at the end of our growing season here, and I'm in a lot of gardening groups, and there's a Manitoba vegetable gardeners group, and I hear the best crops that have done well this year have been the peppers. So a lot of people, jalapenos are a great thing to grow. You get lots on a plant, and with this hot weather we've been happening, it's good. And even in Winnipeg, you can grow a lot of hot peppers. But yeah, so that's what I do with the heat level and making sure everybody can enjoy them and not burn their mouth if they're not into it. And the other thing that's important is, as like what I'm doing right now, is I'm cutting them in half and I'm taking out all the seeds and the inside. So that's a lot of the heat right there. And I'll discard that, but I'm very careful to not get it too much on my fingers. And I wanted to show you this, and this is, I don't know how many people have these, but my mom has these little spoons. They're for grapefruit, and I don't know if you can see. Oh, here we go. So it's got little edges, and so it's meant for grapefruit. So you can scoop out the grapefruit, but they're really good for scooping out the seeds out of the jalapeno. So that's a handy little tool if you happen to have one in your house, or you can buy them. But yeah, so that's just what I'm doing right now. I'm almost done cutting up my jalapenos, and I'll put them on the pan.
You just mentioned the jalapenos coming from Texas and the season and everything. So I forgot to bring my measuring tape, but I look at the size of these jalapenos. Oh my God. I'm used to seeing them a lot smaller, I guess, when they're not in season. So the recipe calls for having about 12 of them. And I got about 10 because they're so big. And I thought, when are we going to eat so many of these? And I just cut about 4 of them for right now because I'm going to use my toaster oven. So I'm interested in seeing how Michelle cooks because her family's a little bit bigger than mine. It's just myself and my husband. So a lot of times I don't use our oven. I use our toaster oven. And so I'll be cooking using this little tray. And the recipe also calls for having like a silicone pad. Instead of doing that, because it is stainless steel, I went ahead last night when I tested these out and put the jalapenos directly on here, and then it kind of cooked the outside skin a little bit better than when I tried it with the silicone pad. So it could be my toaster oven as well. And so that's what I'm doing right now. And I mentioned that I sort of prepare things ahead of time. So I prepared this last night, like I said, because I was concerned that my dog would act up today. And we tasted them last night, and my husband said, wow, this tastes like hummus. Also, if you're the kind of person that just doesn't read instructions right correctly, I put the paprika in the entire mix, so it's even spicier. I'm about to remove the seeds just like Michelle is doing. So I'm going to switch back over to Michelle while I put on my gloves because I do wear contacts. I touch my eyes often, and I will be peeling the jalapenos. And if you want to share anything else with us, Michelle, while I do that real quick.
I do have a couple things to share about this recipe. Now, Maya mentioned that her husband thought that the mixture tasted like hummus, and that's because it's made with chickpeas. So it is very similar to hummus. We're putting garlic in, and some people might even put a little miso paste in their hummus, who knows. But you can also make this recipe with what you have on hand. White beans, like any kind of white bean, also works. It will a slightly different flavor, but it actually works fine. I did it recently with a can of white navy beans. So if that's what you have on hand. And the other thing I'll mention about the beans is that when I started off cooking whole food plant-based and we were using beans, I mean, I wasn't a person who used beans previously. I just bought the canned beans, and I did that probably for the first 4 years that we were cooking like this. But as we got, we started using them a lot more. And one thing that you will hear about a lot in the whole food plant-based world is the Instant Pot. And I think you can kind of see it over there in the corner. I've got an Instant Pot. And I buy my beans dried now. I do have some canned beans in the cupboard if I want to make something and I haven't previously prepared the beans. But I have prepared my chickpeas. I made a bunch of them in the Instant Pot. I actually had 2 containers like this, and 1 container is already gone because my husband likes them. And the other thing, speaking of him, is this recipe does make quite a bit of filling. And if you don't want that many jalapenos, or even if you have 12 or 14 jalapenos and they're not that big and you fill them and you still have leftovers, it's an awesome recipe. It's really versatile. And what we do with it in our house, it'll keep for 3 or 4 days in the fridge. We actually use it as a sandwich filling. So my husband, yesterday, I made some for him, and I added some dill weed to it, some salt and pepper, and I just put it on some bread. So with a tomato and some lettuce, and it was a beautiful sandwich. So you can make a lot out of this recipe. If you make it to take somewhere and then you have that extra, then you might have lunch the next day with some sandwich filling. So that's another great use for this recipe, and another reason why it's so good. It's an easy recipe to make. So I'm just cutting my garlic now. I've got my peppers. So I'll just show you. This is the amount of peppers that I've made. I'm just going to put these over here on the oven. My oven is on. It's set at 425. So that's what you have to have the oven at. And I've got 3 cloves of garlic. Now, if you're a garlic lover like we are, we might put an extra clove or 2 in it, or depending on how big your cloves are as well. But I'm just going to pop those into my food processor. And here we go. And now we'll start getting the other ingredients together. So one of the main ingredients is tofu. Now I wanted to show you those people who are in Manitoba. I don't know what brands are down in Texas, but I buy this brand quite often, and this particular one because it's pressed. So it means that the water is already squeezed out of it. And when I'm making like tofu bacon and things like that, I find it really handy because I don't have to pre-press it. I can just slice it up or put it into cubes, and it makes it's already got a good texture to it. But if you buy the regular sort of blocks also, which we also do, you can press the water out. It's not super necessary for this recipe because the extra moisture is just going to go into the filling, but I did pre-press this, and I only just put it into the press not that long before we started, and it's already you can see how much water is in there. And so these presses aren't easy to find. They're not in all the stores, not here anyways. We ordered ours online. They are a little pricey. You can also press your tofu. You can use a couple plates and a couple of books, and you can just press your tofu. And that's what a lot of people do. Or they make their own between 2 cutting boards or whatever. But it is helpful to just squeeze the water out. So that I've already done that. I'll pour the water out, and then I'll put it all into my food processor. How you doing, Maya?
I'm doing great. I'm liking all the tips that you're sharing. I like your press, and actually I have a bamboo press that I have in storage because I've been moving things around and decluttering my home.
So I've thrown my 3 garlic cloves in my food processor already, and I'm going to get my other stuff ready. So we are using, we need some onion powder, some miso paste, and this is the brand. Again, I'll show you brands because in Winnipeg, people who are watching, they might find that helpful. This is the brand that I prefer to get. I used to be able to find a chickpea miso, a white chickpea miso that was excellent. It was organic, and I bought it at a store called Vita Health. They're not carrying it anymore, so I bought this one there, and this is about like $6.50 for this container, but it does last you a long time. But at the grocery stores, often you'll find these in the international aisle, and so this is also usable. But why I prefer this one, obviously it's organic, but it also has less salt. So this is a little higher in sodium, which if you're trying to avoid a lot of sodium in your diet, then maybe not as good, but it's fine. It's fine to use. So this is just probably a little bit, this is like about half the amount of sodium in this brand. So that's why I prefer it. And we also are going to be using nutritional yeast. So if anyone who doesn't know what nutritional yeast is, it's a staple. So get used to it. It goes in everything. That's what's going to give us the cheesy flavor in our dish today. And we're going to use, I think it's half a cup of nutritional yeast to get it to that cheesy flavor. And you'll also need apple cider vinegar. So that we're going to put that into the recipe. And some smoked paprika, and how Maya said that it went into the recipe. I actually think it does go in the recipe, and you can also use it on top for garnish. So you can put it in, and then you can just sprinkle a little on top because it looks pretty. But again, that if you don't like a lot of hot, not that it's really hot, but everyone's different. So I've got my chickpeas, so I'm kind of ready to go. So I'm going to start measuring stuff out and putting it all into the food processor. If you want to go back to Maya for a second, I'm just going to grab my blade. And then I'm going to put everything in and blend it.
I was just typing in the notes that maybe after the broadcast we can add links to the show notes, in the show notes of the products that you're mentioning. I find a lot of my things on Amazon, but I'm also glad that you mentioned where you find some of your products, because I like also kind of sharing those things.
The garlic cloves are in. Now I'm doing 1.5 cups of chickpeas. So I'm just going to eyeball the half cup instead of using another tool here. So there's my 1.5 cups of chickpeas. And now I want 3 tablespoons of apple cider vinegar. So I'm going to shake it up because this is a really good kind. It's organic and it's got the mother in it. I think that's how they refer to it. And so just to get that in, and I want 3 tablespoons of that. So I'm going to measure my 3 tablespoons as it goes in. 1, 2, 3. The vinegar gives it a little zing to the flavor. Excuse me. And so we've got my apple cider vinegar. Now we've got garlic cloves. 2 tablespoons of the miso paste. So again, I'm going to use that, and I'll just plunk in the miso paste here. That's about 2 tablespoons. I like the taste of miso paste, so I might even go a bit heavy on that. But you can play around these things. I mean, every recipe you make, once you've made it once, then you can adjust your quantities to your own taste level. Oh, I see Allison's on there. Hi, Allison. I'm hoping that a lot of people from my group are yes, Winnipeg Game Changer shirts. Oh, I'm so glad I can see you popping up there. Yeah, I know. That's awesome. I have to make some. We need some shirts. We definitely do. Wouldn't it be fun? Okay, and then we're going to use, what did I say? 1/2 cup of the nutritional yeast. So again, I'm just going to eyeball that here. Got 1/2 cup. Okay, so there's my 1/2 cup of nutritional yeast. I buy my nutritional yeast at Bulk Barn. So those people who aren't kind of, into these ingredients yet. But I also went and got a bag last night. When I first started using it, I would get it at Vitahealth. You can get it at Superstore too, and there's like a Bob's Red Mill brand, but it's really expensive. And there's no reason to pay more for your product. So, oh, hi, another one. Yeah, Kim. Hi, Kim. You live close to Winnipeg. Where do you live? Okay, so this is, nutritional yeast from Vitahealth. Vitahealth is great for ingredients, and prices are reasonable there. And so at Superstore, I actually find that the nutritional yeast costs more, or Safeway or wherever we're shopping. But Bulk Barn is where I normally go now because I use a lot of it. And also it's less waste. I can take, you used to be able to take your jar there and fill it up, but hopefully they'll bring that back soon. Now you have to bring home another plastic bag, but it's not quite as much as that. And I get a lot at a time. So that's a couple of my ingredients there. And now give me 1 second. I'm just going to drain this. And then we are using smoked paprika and onion powder. And I think that's it. So 1 second. So here's my finished product with my, in my tofu press. I can put it down to get it open. So the tofu press, you can see it's got that spring. So when you put it in, it just kind of keeps constant pressure on it. And it doesn't take long to squeeze the water out of it. And like I said, it's helpful when you're making things like a tofu bacon, or you're cutting it into cubes and you want it to have that more of a meat-like texture. then that's really helpful with the tofu. You can see that it's got a good strong texture now. Looks really good. I'm just going to put that into the blender. And then the next ingredient, all I need is the smoked paprika and my onion powder. And garlic powder also, if you don't have garlic cloves, you can always use garlic powder if you don't have them on hand. So the smoked paprika, all I need is half a teaspoon with the smoked paprika. So we'll just put that in. There we go. And 2 teaspoons of the onion powder. Oops. 2 teaspoons of the onion powder is all we need. And then we're good to go. So like that is kind of it. Like really, this recipe is fast. It's easy. It's impressive, I think, at you know, when you're going to these kind of things like potlucks and backyard barbecues. Like I said, you can just say they're jalapeno poppers. You don't have to say that they're vegan or plant-based or anything. Just put them out on the table and people will eat them. And they're delicious. So I think that's, did I do? Oh, no, I need 2 of these. I think that that's a good thing about this recipe. What I think is important when you're trying to stay on track is to have some things that are fun to eat in your repertoire. So when you know, we're heading out of summer and then we'll be, you know, it won't be long before Thanksgiving and those kinds of things come around, and Christmas. And if we are having parties and seeing other people, this is a great thing to bring along and impress everyone, and also have something that you can eat so that you don't get off track, because that's what happens when you go to these kinds of things. And if there's nothing for you to eat, you might kind of slip and start eating some things that you don't want to eat. And then it sometimes can trigger you to eat more of that stuff later on in the week. And even for us on the weekend, sometimes I'll make these on a Friday night just because we feel like we want to watch a movie and we want something fun to eat. So I think it's a great recipe. So I'm ready for the blender. Maya, do you want to take over for a minute and mute me?
Sure. We recently had a conversation, Michelle and I, for a series of interviews that I did for PlantPure communities. Again, interviewing the pod advisory committee, and Michelle is one of the members. So I interviewed her. I haven't shared it yet to the podcast, but I will. So I put a link to the podcast so that you can learn more about Michelle. And but isn't she doing a great job? I love, you're just like a natural at doing these demos and things like that. So and I have been watching you, so feel free to blend, and I will pop my poppers into the toaster when you do yours as well. She's been giving a lot of great tips. I wanted to share what products I used. So she mentioned that her apple cider vinegar has the mother in it. Well, many of you probably know about Bragg's. I've been using this product for so many years, and so it's interesting that now that I'm plant-based, I use it more. Before I would use it because you learn about like how you can detox, and it has good, I believe, probiotics. That's what the Bragg's is, right? What the mother is. And so now it's like you can add it a little bit in your water, obviously in a lot of our recipes. And then of course, I always use their nutritional yeast as well. Here are the products. So I use that, and I use this one as well, the apple cider vinegar, and just the basic garlic. So Michelle was talking about her products. I'll tell you where I find some of mine. And then here's the panko that I use, and I do put them in different containers for storage. This is the miso that I use, and I pick it up anywhere almost. I think Sprouts, Whole Foods has it. And I also sometimes use the red one. So she said that you can use different ones as well. And here's the spice that I'm using in terms of paprika. When I'm out and about, I'm that type of person that loves to go to, now Home Goods, to find a lot of products for the kitchen. I visit that place often, and I always go to the section where they have spices. So this one, I picked that up. I picked this up at Marshall's, but it's kind of like the same store, TJ Maxx, Marshall's, and Home Goods. And I remember there was a while back where I spoke with the manager of one of the locations, and I asked, I think it was the TJ Maxx, and I asked about the food, the products that they bring in. Basically what I did is I told him that I read an article about the chaotic way that they organize the food and other products at these particular stores, and it's because they want to create this kind of sense of this frenzy of we're hunting and we're looking and we're searching. And it is true that when you go to Home Goods, you may not find that product again, so you want to buy it. And so anyway, that's what I do, is I'm always looking to see what products they have. And he said one of the things that's important for them when they buy products for the shelves is to buy products that are organic, that are a little cleaner. And they have a lot of vegan products. And I don't know if people know that. If you want like vegan makeup, they have that too, certain vegan products. But I find my spices there. I buy my peppercorn in a bulk size for a very affordable price. Sometimes I'll see the same product at another store that's a little bit higher end and the price is significantly higher. So let me know where you shop. Where do you buy some of your spices?
So Spices Bulk Barn, I buy a lot of my spices here. So they have a huge range of spices there, and they're actually a lot cheaper than buying these. So I just buy bulk and then I refill these. Smoked paprika is something we use a lot of. So I bought this at one point and I just refill it. I have a bigger jar in my pantry and I just keep adding to it. So I find that the price wise, like I can get a big bag of paprika for less than what I would pay for this little bottle. So I do shop for most of my spices there, but I get them all over the place. Like you say, places like Home Sense or these kinds of stores, you might find something unusual. I also shop we have a Costco here. I'm sure you have Costco down in Texas, and sometimes I get garlic powder there sometimes, or cinnamon or whatever the bigger container. And recently, actually, I've been on the hunt because I bought a seafood spice. It was a Rodell seafood spice, and I bought it from Costco, which was apparently the only place in Canada that carried it, and they didn't reorder it this year. And my husband loves this spice, so I'm on the hunt for it right now. I can't even seem to find it online for less than $40.
Right. Okay, so here's my panko, and I'm just going to top these, and I don't know if you kind of push them down. I should probably watch to see how Michelle does it, but
yeah, I just kind of fill. I mean, push them down a little bit to make
push them down, right?
So yeah, a little bit.
And so one of the things that I love about this way of eating, now that we focus on being oil free, is that you really don't need oil to even roast vegetables. So like this will brown nicely at the bottom, and you see that the pan doesn't have any oil. Michelle is using a silicone mat on hers, but that also prevents, I guess, burning as well, Michelle?
I don't know. I find that I either use the silicone mat or I use parchment paper. For me, it's mostly to keep the pan clean.
Yeah.
And then it's just easier to wash the mat than it is to, how the pan can get that burn on it. And then it's difficult to get them clean. So that's what I mostly use it for. Parchment paper is good. We use parchment paper for a lot of our things, but it's not the most environmentally friendly, I suppose, because we do go through a lot of it if we're using it all the time. So the silicone mats are helpful.
Yes.
I was a little unsure of the silicone mats. I think silicone bakingware started coming out, and I was I don't know. I wasn't sure. I'm like, what is that doing? Like, I'm always kind of cautious with that kind of stuff, but they're very common.
Yes.
And I've heard the whole food plant-based doctors. I know I've heard Dr. Neil Bernard talk about them. So I feel like if he thinks they're okay to use, then I'm okay.
Yes. I probably should have done the panko on a separate plate so that I don't have the extra panko just sitting directly on the pan, because then,
the crumbs,
that'll smoke.
Burn. Oh, I wanted to say about the breadcrumbs. So one thing about the PlantPure cookbooks, and people will see, and that sometimes Kim will use things that aren't totally whole food plant-based, like the panko crumbs, especially. Like I was only able to find these ones in the store. They're gluten-free, which is great for the gluten-free people, but they are just white flour, right? They're rice flour and pea protein. So not brown flour. I think you can get whole wheat ones, but what I also did was I made my own. So I just toasted bread. My favorite bread is, and this is what I would use for the sandwiches too. So this is my favorite bread that I buy all the time. I keep it in the freezer. It's kind of pricey, but It's my favorite. I like avocado toast on it. I like sandwiches with it. It's got lots of seeds. It's lots of high fiber. And
Yes.
I just toasted 2 pieces of bread and put it in the food processor and blended it till I got the breadcrumb mixture. So I'm going to use homemade breadcrumbs instead of using the panko. But you can use the panko, especially if you're feeding them to people at a potluck. They might enjoy it. It's got a little more crunch. You know, this is obviously got, you know, not as crunchy. So whatever you want, and it's such a small amount. It's just a garnish, so not a big deal. But you'll notice that in the PlantPure cookbooks, as compared to, you know, if you're using Dr. Esselstyn's cookbook or Anne Esselstyn's cookbook, they're a little more stricter on things like that. They wouldn't use a product like that. They, you know, Anne uses a term called plant perfect. You know, all the whole food plant-based is oil-free and generally unprocessed, but in the PlantPure world, they're just a little bit more, I say lenient, because they feel like it's important to just keep people on this diet long term, and to not be so strict that you just think it's just too hard and it's too much and you fall off. So they do have you know, there's a little bit of that kind of leeway with their stuff, but it depends what you're doing. It depends if you're trying to overcome some chronic illness, if you're trying to lose weight, if you're just trying to get overall healthy, you might want to eat a little bit more strict at times. But then, like I said, this is a great, when I first started out, one of the things that really helped me was having a list and a repertoire of comfort foods. So I learned how to make a sweet potato chocolate cake that I really enjoyed. So when I had those sweet cravings that I just couldn't get past, I could make something, and I didn't go completely off the diet. I just made a cake at home with whole food ingredients. And then, you know, the jalapeno poppers, like a good mac and cheese recipe like that. All these comfort foods, the things that we're used to eating, especially when you're starting out, that can really help. Because if you're just kind of doing rice and beans and salads and things like that, it's great. You'll get great results. But you may find it restrictive, or and then you might go off the diet. So that's why I wanted to show these jalapeno poppers off today, because it's a good thing to have in your repertoire to keep you on track, and especially when we get into holiday gatherings and things like that. So that's why it's good.
I see here that Lynn says that she found whole wheat panko at Sobeys Sage Creek. Is that in Canada? I guess I've never heard of it. So thank you, Lynn, for sharing that. And we have Nicholas saying hi to Michelle. Allison says, I think people's reliance on oil is one of the most difficult things to let go of. We definitely don't need oil to make great whole food plant-based. Yes, I agree.
So when we started off with the oil, one of the things that we were doing previous to this, even when we were eating vegan, we loved curry, and we were making curry all the time. And we just automatically, we had this, talking about where you buy things, we used to buy this big vat of coconut oil because we thought it was healthy. From Costco, and every time we started a meal, you know, that was the first thing in the pan, right? Because that was the sautéing part. And when we learned about whole food plant-based, the first time we went to go saute our onions and our peppers, and we just put it water, we couldn't believe that it made no difference at all. All it did was take out all that fat, all those calories out of our dish, but at the end of the day, the dish tasted the same. So, you know, sometimes I think it's unbelievable that we're so reliant on it, because oil doesn't really taste like much. You know, you might add a little bit of mouthfeel with the oil, but really it's not adding any flavor to your dish. So it's easy to get rid of.
For individuals who might not know about your group, so here we are. I just added your Facebook group as /plant-based WPG.
Nice.
Yeah, so yeah, this is fun. I went ahead and popped my poppers into my toaster oven, because when I tested this recipe out yesterday, I realized that mine need a little more time. I don't know if it's the size of the pepper. Again, I don't know if it's actually because of the toaster oven. But yesterday I ran them for 15 minutes. So let's see how long, how they do right now. And so I always find, Michelle, that with recipes, I always end up tweaking the recipe, but it's always to your liking, however you like something. If you like more garlic, like Michelle said, I too love garlic. I actually would not change anything of this recipe. I really enjoyed it. And like you mentioned, we could use this as a spread for sandwiches.
Yes, it's great spread
So,
for sandwiches.
yep. So the nutritional yeast, I'm a big fan of the chickpeas. So I wouldn't change anything. I love this. Now, before I went plant-based, I really wasn't a big fan of the poppers. Not that I wasn't a fan, I just did not eat them regularly.
Like
but
the cheese-filled ones, you mean?
yeah, in general, any kind of jalapeno popper. But anyway, what do you pair them with? Or is it just an appetizer before a dinner? I feel like you said it's kind of a summery kind of recipe.
Yeah, I feel like, to me, it feels like an appetizer, or it's that kind of food that you eat like when there's a football game on and you want to make those kinds of things, like instead of, cauliflower buffalo wings and jalapeno poppers, I would pair it with all that kind of stuff. To me, it's potlucky. It's like a treat. It's like something that, you're eating the chips and the chicken wings and those kinds of things. So to me, that's what I use this stuff for, is like, this is my recipe for like a fun event, and something kind of like more party food. We only have 3 of us in this household, and one of them is my mom, who's very tiny and does not eat a lot. Myself and my husband, we eat a lot of food.
Show us your peppers. I see that you're holding them up.
Yes.
Beautiful.
I
love it.
I didn't care about the mess so much. So you're right. Like if you had done the crumbs on a separate plate and then added them to your pan, then you wouldn't have the extra crumbs around, and they might get a little crispy on the pan, but they don't really burn. So I'm not really worried about it, and I just kind of shook the paprika all over it too, so it's fine. I'm a little more messy. It's okay.
Yeah, that's okay.
And I've also encouraged people to go to the PlantPure community's website and take note of all the communities around the world. And if you're traveling and you happen to be down in Dallas, then you might want to message Maya, and she might have some recommendations for you.
That's right.
Maybe they have a meetup at the time. Now, probably not now, but in the future, for sure, us pod leaders should visit each other.
I think so too. I think that's a great idea. And I just took my poppers out, and I'm
Nice.
just sharing with you guys. I might do a little post today on Instagram talking about how we did this together. Allison made another comment. She said, Michelle, do you have any suggestions for changing up the popper filling for a variety?
Yeah, I think you could flavor it differently. Like I said earlier, I don't know if you caught me, you don't have to use chickpeas. You could use any kind of a white bean, I would think. But if you wanted to give it some different flavor, like I said, the leftover mixture, I add dill to it, and I make that with sandwiches. So really different spices depending on what your flavor, what kind of things you're into. In this house, like I mentioned that we go to Jamaica, my husband loves jerk seasoning. So, I could probably do cheesy jerk poppers or something for him, and he'd really be into that. So I think you could mix up the spice.
If I wanted to do something like crumbles, but not really meat, maybe like lentils or
or cauliflower or walnuts. Like walnut, you can do a walnut mixture, like crumble up walnuts and cauliflower together. That makes a really good beef kind of filling, and you can add a beef mixture to it if you wanted to get that flavor and have it really savory. That could totally work.
So I don't want to turn this around, but you can see that it's nicely roasted on the other side, the skin cooked. And I like that. And so I'm going to take a bite. Oh, I love your plate.
I know. This is one of my mom's plates. She likes different kind of meat plates. So this is one I got for her. But they look kind of cool on here. So it's my finished result. I'm going to take a bite as well. I think they'll be very good. They're a little hot. Very good. Oh, you're using a fork. I just used my hands. Very informal.
Oh my, spicy.
Yeah. Well, it depends on the jalapeno, right? Because they can be mild and they can be spicier depending on how they're grown, the soil that they're in, how long they've been on the plant. Conditions can make the plant it vary in spiciness. Like I said, when I did them for a potluck, not thinking that anyone would find them hot, but people did.
So let me ask you, I'm assuming you garden, you live in a home. Do you have a garden in your yard?
I do, right? Front end. So I'm just in a regular city lot, and I have most of the sun is in the front yard. So I started the garden probably 4 or 5 years ago, I, a couple things in a couple containers when I started. And I have some things at the back. My husband built me raised beds in the back. And then I asked him if I could put some up front. He wasn't keen about it at first because he thought it was going to look trashy. But once we put out one or two, and then the neighbors were, saying, "Hey, this is great!" Like they, got lots of compliments on them. I've gone all out. My front of the lawn, like, it's a little bit farm-like right at the moment. I love gardening. I love it. I think that's part of this lifestyle. Like I found that it really de-stressed me. It made me a lot happier to be in the garden, and there's nothing like going out. Like I have a huge bed of kale, a huge bed of Swiss chard out there, going strong all summer long. I can just go over there, lift the container up and harvest my kale and bring it straight in and just start eating it, which I love.
Right.
So you can find me on Instagram at Tree Liberty, the plant-based Winnipeg at Tree Liberty.
Yes.
Or on Instagram. But also, yeah, if you're looking for me, just myself, that's usually my handle is Tree Liberty.
Is there anything else we want to share before we say goodbye?
I want to plug your podcast.
Oh, okay.
Anyone who's on here from Winnipeg and you aren't familiar with Maya's podcast, it's excellent. And she, her husband, Dr. Rizwan, has, he has lectures on there that are very interesting. He's a whole food plant-based doctor. But Maya is an excellent interviewer and has some really interesting guests on there. So please go to her plant-based DFW channel on YouTube and subscribe.
I'm going to share your interview soon coming up, the conversation that we had. And we did a video as well where you include photographs of the group and other activities that you've done. So I'm looking forward to share. It's part of the whole series of interviewing the PAC members. And anyway, so feel free to give us any suggestions. Tell us what you thought about our little thing. Well, thank you so much, everyone, for watching. Michelle, you are awesome. You did such a great job with explaining all of this. We'll see you next time.